Space Escape is an interactive VR experience that has the player run through puzzles and riddles in order to escape the alien invasion that has happened on their ship. The level begins with the player waking up and noticing a screen that tells them to restore the power. The player is able to look around and interact with any objects that they may see. The trickiest part for us at this stage of the level was to immerse the player into darkness, giving them the feeling that the power was off, but still giving them enough light to look around and be able to navigate themselves within the room. An alien can be seen banging on the window trying to get into the room where the player is. Upon turning around, the player will see a light source on the floor and various other objects. An alien can also be seen on the ceiling. The aliens are not able to be interacted with, but are there to show the player that they are trying to get in. In addition to the aliens, we decided to add in spaceships, stars, and asteroids outside of the room to give it more of a realistic feel. We felt the experience was more immersive if we had objects outside of the room that were able to be observed, rather than not having any objects at all. Several props that are located in the room are there to show the player that they can be used, but are not necessarily what they need to progress further into the level. Once the player discovers a light source, they are then tasked with finding out what to do with it. When laying out the objects in the scene, we wanted to make it appear as though the spaceship had crashed, but still have the objects visible for the player to see. Upon further exploration, they will see cell holders in the corner of the room. The light sources can be used as flashlights to read the notes that are scattered in the room. Upon further investigation, the cell that holds the second power source can be seen nearby. Once the power source is placed into the cell, the player can then put it next to their first one. Upon doing this, the lights will turn on, and the player will have more visibility to look around and interact with objects in the room. The screen above the console will tell the player what they must do next. Some features in the scene are implemented solely for the player to mess around with and do not have any functionality whatsoever. The player will then realize that they must interact with the levers to change the color of the lights on top, making them blue in order to proceed to the next puzzle. Each of the levers controlled one light, with some controlling two. This had the users figure out which of the levers needed to be pulled in order to make all of the lights blue. Once the user has turned all of the lights blue, they will notice that the message on the screen has changed, alerting them that the security code required to progress is inactive. The player must then interact with the objects in the room in order to find out what the code is. Some props may look appealing, but are not necessarily helpful. The user will be able to interact with most things in the room and determine which ones are useful and which ones are not. We also wanted to create a realistic environment, so we integrated a hologram globe and a Canadian flag. The flag also has realistic properties to it. After further inspection, the player will find the note on the table, read through it, and determine what part of the code will be. After looking at the bottom of the note, they will notice that 2 of the digits are shown and 2 of them are missing. Therefore, they must figure out what the other 2 digits are based on the other clues in the room. After reading the second note, the player will be informed about what the last 2 digits are. Upon inputting the correct code, the door will open and the player will be able to move forward and progress into the last stages of the level. The center console will inform them that there is a missing key and that they must find it in order to be able to use the console itself. After carefully looking around, the player will realize that the pyramid located in the first room is what they need in order to progress further into the escape pod's control panel. Once the player has retrieved the key, they must make their way back into the escape pod in order to figure out where to place it. Once the key is inserted into the slot, the door will close and the player will be able to move on to the last part of the level. A note located next to the console gives the player a hint as to what the sequence is on the console itself. Once a user has cracked the riddle and inputted the switch sequence, they will finally launch themselves to safety and the experience will be over.